My breath wherever we reach. Then we stop. He's worked with the BBC, featured in, Ivy League universities across the globe, Toastmaster par excellence, moderated panels of several governments of nations, facilitated trainings with top global brands, banks, including Microsoft and the likes, several radio stations he's been host of in their programs, too many to mention. He's a lecturer that teaches English at the National Open University of Nigeria in many of their centers. He's on the planning committee for the Global Entrepreneurship Week at the Lagos Business School.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Realm of Glory, good morning. People say, but I do not deserve the applause. But let me tell you who deserves it. The one who picked me up as a child that lost his mom before the age of 10 and made me who I am today despite the circumstances around my birth. The one who gave me a voice that you know today that is not mine, but gave me that voice to be able to create an impact in society. All the accolades does not belong to me, and it will be foolhardy of me to take it. Ladies and gentlemen, I invite you to the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the Lion in the tribe of Judah, the Lily of the Valley, the Rose of Sharon, the one who cannot be changed, the one who cannot be subsumed, the one who cannot be quenched, the one who cannot be stood up. Yorubas call him Agbanilagbaton. My Igbo call him Aguna Chemba. He's the real Odogu. He's the real Igwe. The one that saves my life every day. The only one I have. People ask me, Rufai, do you have one Babalawo somewhere? I have Baba Banilagbaton. And I tell them I've never entered any Babalawo's house to go and leak anything. That the one who is my protection, I give all the glory to. So ladies and gentlemen, if your hands are not too busy, I want you to do something radical for him. Straight jump! Because he deserves all the glory. Come on! Do something wild for him. We don't know how great he is. Hey. Listen, if you think where you are is by your power, it's a reflection of your direct stupidity. Please, just yada, wave your hands to him. Wave your hands to him. I know no other body. I know no other person. It's the Lord of Lords I know. And that's why I give him all the glory. So during the elections, when they harass me, they don't know my defender is the King of Kings. You say I talk anyhow on TV. I can talk anyhow because I am that I am. It's at my back. He says I should say it. And I don't fear anybody. I only fear who sent me. Because my life is not even in my hands. So it's in the hands of the one that gives life. So if you think I'm going to fear you, get out! Please be seated. So people ask me, where do my courage comes from? My courage comes from he that bred life into me. And I said that boldly because we have a society where people say their courage is with God, but they still go and lick something in the end and say, Baba, give me this to lick. And they call it Bendel Insurance. Yes. In fact, they give it a very funny name. They say, So they say fortification. So you tell them to put their shirt in public, all sorts of marks. That's not your protection. Our protection is in God. So it is not what you sprinkle in front of your business or your office that makes customers come. It is your good nature and your attitude backed up with God that will make the customers come. A lot of you, they've given you all sorts of things in dry gin and you put in the shop. It doesn't make anybody come. What makes people come? Good nature. 1, 2, backed up by the grace of God. I like the Yoruba Bible that says, the grace of God make it rich and added no sorrow. So please depend on the grace of God. I'm really excited to be in the house today. God bless you. And for me, it's a homecoming because this is the injunction God had given me many years ago. About 20 years when I started media, God said, Rufai, I am sending you as an apostle in the marketplace of media. So you are not the conventional journalist. And that's why I say I speak for national development because I have an assignment. I don't come on television to talk because I have to do work and pay my bills. No. I'm an apostle in the media space to be able to change the media space for Christ. And that's the cornerstone of my conviction. So for every time I cannot speak in tandem with what is the truth and reality and for the downtrodden, then I have not failed myself, I have failed God. And that's why we are different. Not everybody apostles in the media space. For me, media is not my career. It's a ministry. There's a difference. That's why when on radio in Lagos, you might have heard me on Inspiration FM for about 10 years running. I've been doing Impact on Sundays where I help a lot of people. Anybody ever heard that? Good. From Inspiration FM days. So I co-founded a radio station recently also called Voice of the People in Lagos and in Abuja. And since then, we've still been impacting people. So if it was about a career path and earning money, I know where to go and earn money. But because life is more important than anything. And you see, we have a nation that have a complete disrespect for life. That's why we are where we are today. That's why because of votes, some people came to scatter you in Okota, beat people up. We saw it. We said it. They threatened us, but we'll keep telling them the truth. We're not going to stop telling them the truth. So it's people that don't respect life. They think they can hurt life for elections. They say they want your vote, but they kill you to get your vote. They don't respect you. They don't. And that's the country we've built. And this is across the political class. And some of these people even claim they are Christians. So you see, being a Christian is not by mounting it. It's indeed where the works of your hands. You're a Christian, but you have to rig to win election. You're not a Christian. You're not a Christian. You want to rig to win election, and after you win the election, you went back and you say, "Oh, I thank God for this miracle. It has happened." That's why after the election, I just asked one question. I say, for those that have won, what did they win? And the question scattered the whole country. I said, go and ban that boy. He's a stupid boy. He has started talking against a stupid boy. He's a stupid boy. But for those that have won, what did you win? When you beat and hurt people to be able to win, you think you have won? You have not won. For the fact you have cheated and they give you something, you think you have won? You have not won. In a matter of time, you will see that the true victory is when you win the hearts of the people. So when you win the fear of the people and you say people are afraid of you, you think you have won? I'm going to be talking about something called the genesis of distortion. And please, big kudos to Reverend Sam. He's a great man. Please, appreciate him. Appreciate Odudubariba himself. Oh, my brother, Mr. Malachi, God bless you. I remember, you see, Mr. Malachi is a great man. I remember the early days of Arise. It was the people we used to call to analyze issues. I remember them. You see, I've learned so much in life. Success does not freak me. When I got to Arise in 2019, nobody was watching Arise. We'll call some guests to book them. They will not come. people like Mr. Malaki will come. But guess what? The same people we used to call, that they don't used to come. When Arise became popular, they started calling me. Me too, I didn't pick their call. Because you know why? The Bible says, do not despise the days of humble beginnings. We're building something that was going to resonate. But you know, life, people are always accustomed to what is big. I always love to be the underdog. You know why? Because I believe the biggest room in the world is the room for improvements. So I am not there yet. The greatest curse anybody can curse, you say you have arrived. I've not arrived though. I'm still bringing bird out of my pocket. I titled it, I said the genesis of distortion. The reason why Nigeria it is today is because there's a genesis to the distortion. It didn't start today. And I'll take you back to some key dates. I'll take you back to the year 1914. The year 1914 was the year they amalgamated the Northern and the Southern Protectorate. But before then, the British had first amalgamated the Southern Protectorate. Because you see, when they came, they met us fighting ourselves. Prior to that time, we had fought the Kiridi and the Jalomi wars. So in the South, for instance, when the British came, the only thing they had to do was just to unite the warring factions. Because the Jeshakiti Parakpo were fighting deep, the Oyo people and all of that. So we're fighting and we have made a lot of slaves. Most of the people that went from the Kiridi and Jalomi wars were those that went as slaves to Latin America. Those are the people that came back as what we call the Agudaos. These are the likes of the Darochas. So that's why you see that Lagos Island is filled with a lot of Brazilian architecture. They even celebrate Fanti Festival. In fact, we eat frijon in Christmas. Frijon is not native to us. It's Portuguese food. So those were the cultures they brought back. But how did we get those cultures? Because we were fighting. So they said the kingdom of God suffered violence. And all this violence can take place before us. We were already fighting from hitherto. Then the British came, settled the fight, then they colonized. The first inroad of the British in what is called Lagos colony today came in the middle 1800s. When two people too were fighting over the throne of Lagos, Kosoko and Akitoye. So they called in the British to come and settle fights. But you see, when you call a bigger man to come and settle fights of something that is very juicy, what do? They take it from you. So when Akitoye went aboard a ship called the HMS Prometheus on the Lagos Marina here, and he said, the British said, we don't know what you're talking about. Sign this edict that you will cede Lagos to us. So Lagos became a crown colony, and that's why in 1906, the first thing we did was the Southern Protectorate, the other fighting parts of the Yoruba parts, and Lagos colony. And that's why you see up till 1960, in fact when we gained independence in 1960, residents full born in Lagos had the chance to either choose a British passport or a Nigerian passport. But a lot of them opted for Nigerian passport. So after that amalgamation, they started to rule over us. So guess the things they started to do to us. The first thing they did was they distorted our mindset. That's the genesis of the distortion. So they told you that your black color was never good enough. How did they do it? Indoctrinations. At first, they tell you have to go through an education system. And after the education system, they say your language was not good enough, so they taught you in English. Have you ever wondered that if we are taught mathematics in Igbo, there will have been more people with a sound understanding of mathematics than in English? So the first thing you have to do, you have to learn your colonizer's language. And when you learn your colonizer's language, they took away your identity on how to think. So they call your customs and traditions idolatry. And the last thing they did was that they set up a fight between you, because they know if you are united, then there's going to be a problem. You remember the Tower of Babel? Even our God knew the importance of unity. So what did he do? It changed the language. So they set up a fight. And it's so easy. How would they do it? They have agents. Stir up ethnic strife. Yorubas will fight Hausa, Hausas will fight Igbos and all of that. And they fan the embers. And they constantly do it. So the first genesis of distortion was the initial colonialism. And they continued. In fact, they did it up till 1959 when we had the first elections, the 12th of December. You know what they deliberately did? That election, we know who won that election. Who had more votes? The NCNC had more votes. But originally, the British had planned that it was going to be a hung parliament. You know what they call a hung parliament? A hung parliament is when there's no clear winner in a parliamentary system. So you have to form a government of national unity. The British had known that it would be either the Yorubas and the Igbos, the Action Group or the NCSC, and the MPC. The MPC was standard. So that was how they did it. And that was what happened. But they knew that was going to bring a very big problem. You had a boisterous Action Group in opposition. There was going to be problems. And they knew it was not going to last. And they knew that it was going to open more fault lines that led to the war in 66. So have you ever wondered that it was just after 6 years, after the first elections, no, then we had another elections in 64, 65 that spanned into 64, 65. So pretty much 6 years after the first election and 2-3 years after the second election, then we had a civil war that further deepened the fault line. So the first agent of distortion, and I'm sure we all know that, it will take years for you to recover from such a strife like that. So they have set the tone for what became the war, and they are giving it to us at a beat, and we are taking it. So once we are taking it, once we have fought the first civil war and all of that, and when the civil war started, they were the ones that started selling their weapons. So afterwards, they had started the first genesis of distortion. They had caused hatred amongst us. The hatred means that we will never be able to come together. And please, that's why I say every wall of hatred you have for your brother, break it. Because if they can take our unity, they can take our strength. So once they caused that hatred, we couldn't come together again. And that's what we've been circling with. In the last election, our problem was not about tribe or religion. But they made it about tribe or religion in the end. Because they know the genesis of distortion. So that's the first genesis of distortion. And that's why you see that life in Nigeria has now become something like an Obatian state. It is British. We talk about Leah Sharibu. Leah Sharibu is a symptom of a deeper problem. We talk about Nigeria not work. It was not structured in a way that it was going to work. Because people wanted to take it for their own benefits. And that's why they don't like the truth. That's why they want to dominate every sphere. They want to shut people down in the media when you try to rat them out. So they deliberately put all of these things in place so that these systems and these hegemonies will not make you come together or work. You think all of a sudden Boko Haram just starting. It's also part of a grand system. Now that we've properly destroyed parts of this country with kidnapping, insecurity and all of that, it's easy for non-state actors to roam wild. So there was a genesis to the national distortion. And they knew what they were doing. Pre-independence, post-independence. This game is so big that our politicians are just being played as a pawn in the game. But you know why it's easy to play our politicians? Because they see their greed. A nation can never grow if the leaders are greedy. A nation can never grow if the leaders are greedy. Once they see greed, they exploit the greed of the leaders. Have you ever noticed, why is it that most African countries are poor? Because their leaders are greedy. And they are taking advantage of the mindset of their leaders to destroy the nations. For what reason? For natural resource. Because they know we are blessed. You know, Nigeria has the capacity to be a $10-15 trillion economy. Even more than that. America is going to about 20 trillion now. We have the capacity to be a superpower. But they know we have so much resource. So the next thing they do is they target the greed of our leaders and the selfish interest of our leaders. And they pull the buckle. So our leaders are so content with them having 5-10 billion in their bank accounts, rather than the collective development of the people. I mean, look at how bad the roads are in Lagos. For a Lagos that collects a lot of taxes. So it's not even about the politicians. It's about the systems that break all of us down, that create this national distortion. Even with our security system. That's why you see, it will now have different layers. They will put ethnicity in it. They will put religion in it. But these things are deeper than ethnicity and religion. Because they need you to be confused about the dimensioning of these systems. They don't want you to think and know where it's coming from. So the truth is, you can't grow beyond the system that is fraudulent. That's why you see the way we are today with the Naira. All of a sudden, the Naira, that used to be 1-to-1 with the dollar. Look at where it is today. It's 1,004 something. When they were defending the Naira and we kept on telling them there are no fundamentals, they thought I was joking. They said, oh, that boy is a stupid boy. Has the Naira not started rising again? For a country that is so much blessed with milk and honey and its currency cannot be stable, you will know to a large extent that it's because the leaders are not thinking right and they've been sucked in. So maybe sometime soon we'll defend the Naira even more and it will go back to square one again. But please do not think the Naira will go back to where it used to be before. I'm sorry. I'm in the church. I believe in hope and faith. But I'm a realist to the core. I'm not sabi deceive people. Though. If you think it will be 1-to-1, be careful with what you think. Oh. Except we change the systems and the mindset that makes it difficult for us not to be able to produce as a country. Except to become a productive nation. Except we now start to tackle the genesis of this national distortion. We're not going to go anywhere. So, insecurity you are seeing is a symptom. Have you ever wondered why, growing up, the same army that used to be so powerful cannot get rid of bandits? So you think all of a sudden it just happened? It didn't just happen. Got destroyed like that. It didn't just start. It was systematically, and they kept on seeping into our consciousness and our mindsets. That's why you see it's getting more difficult by the day. But you see, in all of this, for those that have facts and know the Lord, their feet shall be firm on the ground. But the thing is, it's not about just having facts and knowing the Lord. So what are you doing about it in your space? Are you part of the national greed? The world, not human greed. So we have a leadership that wants to meet their greed and meet our need. It can never be possible. That's why you eat and meet our need. It can never be possible. That's why you see how much trillion. Make it true. What 50 naira could buy 10 years ago, can it buy today again? Can it buy today again? We say we have gas, we are flaring gas, but we can't buy gas in our own country without having an exorbitant fee. We produce electricity, but it's not enough. Despite the fact that they don't give you power, they now come and say band A. And you're not even getting the band. The electricity agency is like bandits. Today, this morning, I had loss of power in the house. I recharged, how much? Was it 35, 40,000 naira? And I got, I think, how many units did I get? Maybe a little over 100 units. True to pass, it's going to be worse. If they ever told you that we can have a country where they can kidnap somebody for close to 10 years, would you ever have believed it in Nigeria before? No. If they ever told you that you will have a country where food can be this expensive, would you ever believe it? If they ever told you that Nigeria now will be so at a point that Benin Republic, their currency is bigger than ours. If you saw the front page of the Telegraph newspaper yesterday, they said Nigerian neighboring countries now reject Naira up for CFA and dollar. Because CFA is 650 to the dollar. Naira is 1,004 something to the dollar. And if care is not taken, it's going to be worse, because at some point we are getting to 1,900. This was the same CFA that as at the early 90s, 16,000 naira was 1 million CFA. So the ingredients of national distortion, and in all of this, the political class still wants to grab power. So the ingredients of national distortion is greed. But the funny thing is, what I'm most scared about is the greed of the people. Because you see, all of these unscrupulous politicians, they have agents. Some of them will have agents in this place. Isn't it? But because, and I'm going to talk to you today, because of what you want to benefit, you see the truth and you look away. You don't know you're doing yourself. Because if this country is good, it's going to be good for all of us. If this country is not good, it's not going to be good for all of us. Are you happy the way it is that as a city as big as Lagos, we don't have pipe-borne running water? When last can you open your tap and say this is government running water? And for you to still do borehole, they are going to charge you for doing borehole. But guess what? I had a friend that was telling me, I said, 1992, when he moved into his house on Molly Estate, there was pipe-borne running water that came into his house, and they said, connect to government water. So how did the situation become deplorable over the years? So these are the agents of national distortion, and that's why I say insecurity is just part of them. The same north that people used to love to drive to in the past, very lovely roads, that your car will even break down, you will sleep on the road, are places that you can't go again because of greed and national strife. But let me tell you, they will look for all sorts of things to cloud it. They will call it, oh, it's because of tribalism and everything. That's why you, the people, need to be united. Yoruba, for an Igbo man, the Yoruba brother is not your problem. For a Yoruba man, an Igbo man is not your problem. For an Hausa man, and a Bibo man is not your problem. The thieving political class are your problems. Because of their own greed, and they don't want you to thrive and move further. And because it's always been a fight between the masses and the bourgeoisies. That was what the British too did during the colonial days. They will always build systems of exploitation from you. They will levy you, they will tax you. Number one, you, cyber security taxes. Has your earning increased? So, and that's the mindset of, if you continue to get richer, why a lot of people continue to get poorer? Real quickly, how do we break these agents of national distortion? Number one, unity. We must unite across every cultural bound, because our real problems are the perpetrators of evil, not your brother from another tribe. And that's why today I come here on behalf of Nigeria. Anybody that's been caught in any tribal debacle or war, please apologize, let's forgive. For this last election, please let's forgive. We can't continue to hold the hurt so much. It will stop us from progress. These are bad people who want the division to continue so that we will not be able to reason properly for ourselves. So it's a gimmick to set us against each other. You are not my brother. You are not my problem, my brother. You are not my problem, my sister. It is those who are manipulating us that are trying to cause chaos amongst us. So please, whoever is hurt, I beg, on behalf of the integrity and the hope we expect in this country, let's forgive. Secondly, we need to teach our children. You know, I'm always very happy when I see babies. You know, when I see babies, you know what it reminds me? God has not given up on the world. In fact, when I see babies, I say, at least rapture is not coming anytime soon. Because God is still throwing people here. So he has not quit on us. Then parenting, we need to teach our children. Parents, we are not teaching our children enough. Because of the vicissitudes of life, you want to earn, you want to do this. We are neglecting the family. The reason for this problem in Nigeria is that the family structure is dead. We now have a society where people bring things to the house. Parents don't check any longer. Parents don't ask questions. We have Yahoo Boys Mothers Association, and they're proud of it. We need to go back to the home. We need to go back to when parents talk to their children. How many parents still eat dinner with their children? Do you know what the dining table means? It means the bonding table. Please, stop allowing your children to go and eat in the room and eat in different places. All of you talk, see them. Even if you're not saying, look them in the eyes. Dine with them. There are so many things they will tell you over food that they will never tell you when you call them to the room. We are losing that generation. Another thing, we need to hold our politicians accountable. And that's why I say kudos to you, sir. Please, a big round of applause for Reverend. A big round of applause for Reverend. As a church is set up an advocacy group, most churches will not try it. Because they'll be waiting for the day one politician will come and donate. Then this is how we can truly start to build a country where accountability can be the order of the day. Nigeria is a beautiful country and it will never waste away in the name of Jesus. But let me tell you, apart from saying amen, you need to walk, because the forces that want it to waste away are so more than the forces here that are saying amen. Great lofty height will attain to build a nation where peace and justice shall reign. O God of creation, direct our noble cause. Guide our leaders right. Help our youth the truth to know. May God help us to shine and open our eyes to what is true. God bless you.
I think you can do better for Rufai the Fire.
You are the young suckers that grow when the old banana die. The tragedy in most Africa, particularly in the political arena, is that the old bananas refuse to die. With the consequence that you turn up to be 50 and you are still told you are leaders of tomorrow. That is part of the problem of the continent of Africa. It is the duty of every young man to be angry with the society. Today we live in a country where there is need for anger. We live in a country where people reap where they have not sown. We live in a country where thieves are celebrated, where thieves are canonized and good people are demonized. That is the country and the continent in which we live. A friend of mine was telling me, he's from South Africa, he's a white South African. He told me, you know, what we did in many African countries is that we gave you Africans the crown without the jewel. And we gave you a toy called politics. That is what you play with. You love to be called presidents. You love to be basis of tribe and religion in pursuit of that thing, those political offices, but we control you. And they are right. They are right. I'm on Instagram. I'm on WhatsApp. Don't use WhatsApp, use Signal. If you use Signal, they will not catch you. Who told you? You control nothing. Today, if the owners of WhatsApp in the United States of America decided to take it out, you are back to the Stone Age. You own nothing. Today we have Starlink with Elon Musk. If he takes it away, you are nothing. Africa owns nothing. Zero. You are an expert in zero. That tells you how difficult it is. And we have had in the recent past leaders who have remained in power for a very long time. Paul Biya of Cameroon, now at age 91. Nguema of Equatorial Guinea. It is not going to be easy. You know, I was talking to a friend of mine 2 weeks ago at an airport in Lagos, Nigeria, and he is a medical doctor, aged 70. And he asked me, you know, I've listened to you on many occasions. Do you know that in recorded history, it would appear that our race is always dominated by other races? That when the Arabs came here, they dominated us. That when the Europeans came here, they dominated us. We are dominated at home and we are dominated abroad. That when we go to other places, modern history appears to suggest that we never dominate. And I want you to reflect on that. Today, in the continent of Africa, when we talk about democracy, we relate democracy to Greece. I was in a debate with some individuals yesterday on a platform which I never contribute to, but I did because I thought that a mortal mistake was being made. The individual was suggesting that African societies did not have systems of governance. And I told the individual, have you read a book or any book by John Henry Clark? Then, of course, as people do in social media platforms, he say, I have read. I said, name for me in the next 1 minute, don't Google. In the next 1 minute, name for me the book by John Henry Clark that you have read. Of course, he had not read. Then I asked him, Are you familiar with the book on the Gada system of governance by the Oromo of Ethiopia? And I told him, don't Google, respond to me in 30 seconds. And if you say you have read, I'll ask you what the first opening statement of the book is. He had not read. We don't read. And if you don't read, you cannot know. And if you do not know, then you become defensive. I gave you the two examples of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and Prophet Isa, Jesus, peace be upon him, as the Muslims would say, because they demonstrate that acquisition of knowledge has no age limit. Christ begins to read at age 12. And the Prophet Muhammad finds the message through Jibril. The last question then, at what age did Aisha bint Abu Bakr get married to the Prophet, and how old was the Prophet? Those of you who are Muslims. This is intergenerational conversation.
The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was 25. Aisha,
when he received the word, at what age did he marry Aisha bint Abu Bakr? He was 53. Aisha was 6. But the marriage was consummated when Aisha was 9. Go and check.
9, yeah.
Read Abu Huraira.
Yes,
I'm trying to demonstrate, even those of you who are Christians, you must read the Quran. How many of you here who are Christian think that reading the Quran takes you to hell? Because some people teach that kind of theology, which is completely misguided. I am trying to say that when you are engaging in intergenerational conversations, all knowledge is valid. In 1985, when the then Tanzanian head of state was leaving office, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, he said that there is no Kiswahili word that quite defines what happens when a person leaves office for a younger generation. But he said, in my ethnic group, there was an Aki, there is a word. And I want Tanzanians to begin using that word, kungatuka. Do you know that the word kungatuka is a Zanaki word, which has now been made a Kiswahili word? To leave office, tunasema unangatuka. And ukingatuka, you let another generation take over. Today, we are talking about generations. And we are saying that every generation has a role to play. And history has been consistent in demonstrating to us that it is young people who change society. If you look even in religion, Christianity is a very young religion, and Islam, very young religions. If you go to the older religions such as Hinduism, how many of you here have read the books Mahabharata? How many of you have read the Mahabharata? This is a university where people ought to be reading. How many of you have read the Mahabharata? None of you. If you read the title of the Mahabharata, it says, Sage Vyas says that he or she who has not read the Mahabharata has read nothing. The Mahabharata is the longest poem ever written by man, 11 times longer than the Bible, the Mahabharata. I want you to go and read it, and read the summary of it, and understand how the origin of Hinduism. And in that book, I'm telling you about intergeneration. When you read the Mahabharata, you will find 3 major characters there. One of them is called Bhishma, who had a gift He could only die when he wished. The other one is one of the first people in Hinduism to be called a Mahatma. Mahatma means a great soul. Those of you who are younger, the only person that you know to have been called Mahatma is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, otherwise known as Mahatma Gandhi. Those of you who come from the University of Nairobi, you'll find the statue of Mahatma Gandhi at the Great Court. A great soul, because soul is Atma. And in that particular book, there are young people who are trained. They are called the Pandavas. They represent good. And their cousins are called the Kauravas. They represent evil. And why am I telling you this? Bhishma is allowed to live for many years in order to train the young ones, because wisdom and experience comes from age. And it is the duty of the young ones to learn from the experienced ones. And it is the duty of the old ones to give way. This is why when he's writing in 1958, the then 22 years only, Chinua Achebe, in his book Things Fall Apart, poses the question, and where are the young suckers that will grow when the old bananas die? You are the young suckers that grow when the old banana die. The tragedy in most Africa, particularly in the political arena, is that the old bananas refuse to die, with the consequence that you turn up to be 50 and you are still told you are leaders of tomorrow. That is part of the problem of the continent of Africa. I'm demonstrating to you, in Hinduism you see that. In Christianity, or even much older religion, Buddhism. How many of you know the story of Gautama Buddha, or the Buddha? I want you to go and find out the Buddha, who left his palace, the palace of his parents, and went out, and he acquired enlightenment. He was a young man. And then you come to Christianity. Look at those whom Christ picked. How old were they? How old was Peter? How old were the two sons of Zebedee? These were individuals in their 20s, your age. When you read about these apostles or disciples of Jesus, don't think that they were my age. They were not. Christ himself is crucified at age 33. History teaches us. They were doing great things when they were young, but they were learning from the older ones. They were engaging in conversations, and the world has never been the same again because of the works that they did. Those of you who are Muslims, look at the Sahabas of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, Abu Bakr, others. Look at the key writers and key commentators of the Hadith. How old was Aisha when she was writing the Hadiths? They were in their 20s. If you are 30, you are Methuselah in those days. You are supposed to have died. Intergenerational conversation. And you see it right in all these books, and you see it even in the history of societies. Look at Europe. Look at the process of exploration in Europe. How old was Marco Polo when he was going to China? How old was Vasco da Gama when he was leaving Lisbon and coming through the Cape of Good Hope, coming to Mombasa and going all the way to Goa in India? They were in their 20s. How old was Christopher Columbus? How old were they? They were young, in their 20s. It is the energy and zeal and zest of youth that gives birth to change. Who among you, how many of you here have watched the film Gandhi? How many of you have watched the film Gandhi by Richard Attenborough? 1982 was the year of its making. What do you watch? I want you to go and look for the film Gandhi. You can Google it and find it. I want you to only look for one thing. When the Mahatma is speaking to young people, and there is a conflict between the Muslims and the Hindus, and this is what the Mahatma says. He tells them, and I remember when I was a young man in Gujarat, one day, the person who was reading from the prayer book came and did this thing. He said he read from the Hindu Gita to the Muslim Quran and to the Christian Bible, reading from one book to the other as if it did not matter which book was being read as long as God was being worshipped. And he told his audience that when you say we kill the Muslims and the others say we kill the Hindus, an eye for an eye will only make the world blind, the Mahatma said. And he told that young man, I see you are very angry. Your anger is necessary. But your anger must be given order. Because if anger is not orderly, if anger is not canalized, then it is devastating and negative. But if you canalize water, it acquires power. It can generate electricity. It is the duty of every young man to be angry. To be angry with the society. Today we live in a country where there is need for anger. We live in a country where people reap where they have not sown. We live in a country where thieves are celebrated, where thieves are canonized, and good people are demonized. That is the country and the continent in which we live. That is why we must have conversations. If you look at societies that have changed throughout history, I've talked about exploration. Look at the people who came here and colonized us. How old were they? And they changed us permanently. Permanently. They came here, found us worshiping our gods. They changed us. We now have, even our names, they changed. You are no longer Mutuku, you are Raphael. Because you belong to the Anglican Church. You are no longer Onyango. You are John, because you are Roman Catholic. You are no longer Ntamburi, because you are Martin, because you are Methodist. Young people, they came here, they were young. But there were people back at home. The Royal Society in England was the guarantor of them, and they changed societies. What are you going to change? You who are here. Don't tell me you are young or you are too young. No, you are not too young. But that can only happen when there are conversations. How many of you here have watched the film 10 Commandments, 1956 version by Cecil B. DeMille, with Charlton Heston as Moses and Yul Brynner as Ramesses II? How many of you? How many of you? Because you are Christian, you ought to have watched the 10 Commandments, the 1956 version, the original one. And I'm giving you these examples partly to educate you and partly to demonstrate to you that you are not reading sufficiently. You know, remember this joke that was being made? That if you want to hide anything from an African, you put it in a book. There is no danger of its ever being found. You remember that joke? I want you to participate in this dialogue. How do you learn if you don't read? How many of you have read the last conversations of Socrates? How many of you first have heard of Socrates? If in a congregation of 100, only 3 have heard of Socrates, then we are in trouble. We are in trouble because Socrates is one of the leading thinkers in the world. How many of you here have heard of Orunmila, one of the greatest African philosophers from the Yoruba people of Nigeria? How many of you have heard of him? Then what conversations must you have? Because you must have conversation through acquisition of knowledge. You must read. And today you are in a totally different world where you can Google anything. You can find anything you want. Because if you don't read, how are you going to compete with the Koreans? Because they are reading. How are you going to compete with the Vietnamese? Because they are reading. How are you going to compete with the Brazilians? Because they are reading. How are you going to compete with the Americans and the Europeans? Because they are reading. How are you going to compete with the Arabs? Because they are reading. Today, I believe almost all of you here have a phone. How many, all of you have phones? How many of you have phones? Does any one of you have a phone which is made in any country in Africa? None of you. That tells you that our conversations, you know, in Africa, the only thing, a friend of mine was telling me, is from South Africa, is a white South African. He told me, you know, what we did in many African countries is that we gave you Africans the crown without the jewel. And we gave you a toy called politics. That is what you play with. You love to be called presidents. You love to be called ministers with motorcades. But we control the economy where it matters most. You fight on the basis of tribe and religion in pursuit of that thing, those political offices, but we control you. And they are right. They are right. Even you, young generation, you will be dominated. I travel across this continent, and every time I'm traveling to any part of this continent, I see young Chinese between the ages of 20 and 30. They are going. I met one and he told me, I'm going to Kaduna in Nigeria. How many of you here have been in Kaduna in Nigeria? I meet them and they tell me I'm going to Banjul in the Gambia. Age 20. I'm going to Porto Novo. What are they looking for? Who is behind them? The older generation is behind them. At the University of Nairobi, there is a whole institute which they have built called the Confucius Institute. How many of you have read about Confucius? There is a Confucius Institute at the University of Nairobi. There is a Confucius Institute at the University of Accra in Ghana in Accra. There is a Confucius Institute at the Dar es Salaam University. There is a Confucius Institute at Makerere University. There is a Confucius Institute in most African public universities. Why? Knowledge. Because this battle is going to be fought and won on the basis of knowledge. A Chinese will be reading the works of Confucius, the works of Mao Zedong, the works of Deng Xiaoping, because they want to learn, because the knowledge is built upon knowledge. How many of you know the story of Mekatilili Wamenza, of the Giriama people? How many of you? How many of you here know the origin of the road Mwindi Mbingu? Do you know Mwindi Mbingu? How many of you here have read the history of Harithuk or Didan Kimathi Washuri? None. Then you can't can't compete. These are the conversations that I want us to engage in. And particularly when I come to a university, I want the university to be the fountain of knowledge. Today, I ask people when they say they are teaching political science, I ask, who are the leading thinkers in political science that you are talking about in Africa? What are we teaching in our faculties of political science at universities? I ask those students of economics, is there a student of economics here in this assembly? Have you read Dambisa Moyo? The leading economic thinker, the Zambian lady Dambisa Moyo. You have not read Dambisa, you are not an economist. Political science, he's a student of political science here. Who is a student of political science? Have you read Achille Mbembe? These are the contemporary leading thinkers in economics and political science in Africa. You are still reading Lipsy and Michael Todaro. Europe stopped reading those things in 1960 except for historical purposes. Because conversations is not always physical, conversation is also through books. Because you learn from one thing. I remember there is a Kenyan politician who was my very good friend. The night before he died, he called me. He was then lying on what turned out to be his deathbed at Kenyatta Hospital, Martin Shikuku. And he told me, young PLO, do you know any university that teaches experience? Where they have a faculty where they teach experience? I said, I do not know. Say they can't teach experience. You must have experience by going through processes. This is what conversation that we are talking about, that the young shall pass over the knowledge to the old. Today, in all major Bantu communities throughout Africa, we have circumcision, right? The Meru have them, the Embu have them, the Agikoyo have them, the Abakusi have them, among the Kalenjin tribe they have them. But what do? They just stand still and get circumcised. Beyond that, what knowledge is being passed as it was in the olden days? Nothing. Some even now go under anesthesia and they get the foreskin removed. No knowledge. These were the systems that were used to pass knowledge. And they died. Why do you think that the Europeans have institutes where research is undertaken? Why do you think that research and development is important in these societies? Because that is where you pass over knowledge. Why do you think that the Europeans came up with titles such as professors? Who is a professor? You just don't wake up and you become a professor. Today, we live in a country where every other individual, particularly in the political arena, run to some rural university in their village. They are given a 100-degree honoris causa. The following day he says, you must call me a doctor. They're now even offering honorary professorials. And you hear somebody who never went beyond standard 6. If you don't introduce them as Professor so-and-so, they go to the master of ceremony and say, I'm Professor so-and-so. The acquisition of titles without knowledge. Titles that are not earned. Conversations which are intergenerational. If you look at all societies, look at the development of Europe, from absolute monarchs to constitutional monarchs. How did it happen? Young people rose in Europe from Sweden to Russia in 1917, and they slaughtered all their kings. That is how constitutional monarchies came in Europe. And where they did not take away the kings, They actually removed monarchies. Italy is one of them when they eliminated the Medicis. In France, in 1789, when there was a revolution, it is young people who came out. In the struggle for American struggle, War of Independence, how old was George Washington? How old was Emperor Atatürk of Turkey when they were eliminating the Ottoman Empire and gave to the English language the word or the expression the Young Turks? How old were the freedom fighters in Africa when they were fighting? In Kenya, how old was Kenyatta here? How old was he? How old was Dedan Kimathi Washiu? In Tanzania, border. The middle class, my house will be guarded by Cake Gadawild from Canada, or G4S Gadawild from Canada, or G4S from the United States of America. And when I want to sell my building or I want to let out this building, it will be Knight and Frank from the United Kingdom. And when I'm thirsty, I'll possibly be taking water, Dasani, which is Coca-Cola. And my shoes is from Italy. My watch from Switzerland. My underwear made in Bangladesh or Vietnam. My cologne is from Sweden. And my fake hair, if I'm a lady, is from Brazil. I mean, just think about it. This is why we must have these conversations. Because what do we own? And those of you who think that butter is our own, butter was from butter in Canada. And then you can't afford anything, of course you go to Gikomba. You buy mitumba, which is discarded clothes from some United States of America. Africa consumes that which has been rejected by other civilizations. I can go on and on, but what I'm stressing to us, it is important that we begin to have meaningful conversation. Let us come and reason together. Let us come and reason together. This is what is making the Chinese go where they are going. The Chinese young men and women demonstrated in Tiananmen in 1980s, and I want you to look when the Chinese are holding their party meeting, 6,000 of them drawn from different parts of China. China is now planning for the next 100 years. You Kenyans are thinking of how to extend the life of your president and your governor. Others are thinking about how to relate with Africa in 100 years. When none of us, all of you, will be dead. But they are thinking about it. The Chinese wall was built over a period of 500 years. That is strategic thinking. They know that this generation will hand over to the next generation and hand over to the next generation. It is intergenerational. That is how we must think. Today, do you know that when you go to Kisumu, you actually can eat tilapia, which is imported from China, in Kisumu? Tilapia. Do you know that if you go to Carrefour supermarket, which is a French outlet, you can buy butter from Denmark and eggs from Romania, as if our chicken forgot how to lay eggs? These are the realities. Until and unless we have those conversations, we are going nowhere. Where is the mentorship program? Look at your television. What are you watching on your televisions? Hollywood. You know, I went to a certain university in this country and somebody came and said, I'm an expert in computers. I said, who's expert about what? Expert of what? Which ones do you own yourself? I'm on Instagram. I'm on WhatsApp. Don't use WhatsApp, use Signal. If you use Signal, they will not catch you. Who told you? You control nothing. Today, if the owners of WhatsApp in the United States of America decided to take it out, you are back to the Stone Age. You own nothing. Today we have Starlink with Elon Musk. If he takes it away, you are nothing. Africa owns nothing. Zero. You are an expert in zero. In China, they realize that you learn from others and create your own. That is how they created TikTok. That is how they created WeChat. That's how they have Weibo. Chinese. When I was young, the phones that you knew about were Nokia. Where is Nokia today? There was Blueberry. Where are they today? Today, the leading phone companies in the world, Techno, China. Samsung, China. I think 61 years ago, our economy in Kenya was bigger than the economy of South Korea. Today, our economy at GDP levels is slightly over 110 billion shillings. 110 billion. Our population is about 50 million. South Korea is about 52 million. Their GDP is 1.6 trillion. GDP per capita is over 30,000. Our GDP per capita is not more than 1,500. The statistics claim it is 2,000, but I doubt. We generate only 5,000 megawatts of electricity. 5,000 megawatts of electricity. South Korea generates 75,000 megawatts. You say we are going to industrialize. Industrialize where? With what? Conversations. The universities that we have in many African countries have become forums for issuing certificate issuing institution. If you ask how many patents were registered by Kenyan researchers in the last 1 year, if they reach 2, I would be shocked. 2. I will stop in the next 3 minutes. This conversation must be conversation about building Kenya. If you go to public universities in Kenya today, you don't hear about the engineering students who are working together to come up with invention. No, you hear Nyeri Students Association, South Nyanza Students Association, Sondusa, Meru Students Association, Embu Students Association. How can a continent degenerate in primordial ethnic instincts as the dominant factor, even in institutions of higher learning? Conversations about what? What are we conversing about? Because we can have dialogue, but about what? We must choose what we are having dialogue about. Are we having dialogue about agriculture? Do you know that Vietnam will next year overtake Kenya and Uganda combined in the production of coffee? Conversations about education. We do not know whether we should have grade 9 in primary or in secondary. Even matters as mundane as the physical location of a classroom, we do not know in Kenya. We do not know. In less than a few years, 30 years, how many commissions have we had on education? A Rolling Stone, they say, has gathered no storm. Since 1963, we had the Beecher Commission, the Ominde Commission, the Gashadi Commission, the Koech Commission. And then, of course, we had, that was ticket. Then we have the Munavu task force. How can you constantly have task force about education? How many times has the United States of America changed its education system? How many times have the Vietnamese changed their education system? How many times have the Chinese changed their education system? In such a confusing manner. Conversations about what? About industrialization. You go to Juakali sector. I one day took a friend of mine from Germany there, where they do in Kamukunji, and one of the fellows who is making suitcases was saying, we intend to export these suitcases to Germany. He said, these things, export them. How? How can they be exported? What is the standard of exportation? We should have converted Juakali into something else. This is the conversation that we ought to be having. In other words, you young people must engage us in conversation that is going to make Kenya be a good country for this generation and generations yet to be born. We must love ourselves. I'm suggesting to us that we don't love ourselves. And because we don't love ourselves, we don't do things. You know, sometimes when I walk around Nairobi and I see the way we drive, it is a reflection of how our minds work. Because rules are there. When you go to a driving school, you are told you stop when the lights are red and go when they are green. In Kenya, you go when they are red, if at all, and you stop when they are green, assuming that a police officer does not stop you. And Boda Boda is riding everywhere, and the pedestrians are crossing everywhere. You would think that you are in Amboseli National Parks and you are dealing with tic-tics and gazelles, not human beings. Conversation must be about order. About order. Even when we demonstrate, I saw when the Gen Z were demonstrating in Kenya, within a short while it had degenerated courtesy of goons into chaos and looting was taking place. The following week they were demonstrating in Bangladesh. And what happened? No looting. They went to the palace of the president ran away. All cabinet ministers ran away. Order. Target. In the Arab Spring, when that young man burned himself, what did they do? Change. In Tunisia is trouble, but change. Change in Egypt. Conversations must be about ideas. And you must be mentored. My good friend here, the Reverend Obwanda, and I collaborate in a number of things about excellence. Who have you mentored? And what are you mentoring them about? What are you reading? In 1950s, when Chairman Mao Zedong, how many of you have read Mao Zedong's The Red Book? You must read it, even if you are not a communist. When Mao Zedong wrote that book, he said, and Vladimir Lenin, after the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, he said, if you want to say anything, you must say it in 3 minutes. And if you do not know, you do not speak. You have no right to speak. It is only those who know who ought to speak. Vladimir Lenin. And I want to conclude with this. It is through dialogue that you change societies, and you change them. And when that is why I told you to read the poem Fear. Because when you lose fear, then you can change the world. You know, there is a young German who changed the world. That young German is Martin Luther. How many of you have heard about Martin Luther? Martin Luther became famous because on the 31st day of October in the year 1517, after he had had dialogues with the clergy in the Roman Catholic Church about many things, he was dissatisfied. He did not just come out and make noise. Martin Luther, 31st of October 1517 in the 16th century, he came up with what then began or heralded the beginning of the great reformation of the church. The 95 Theses at the church in Wittenberg. How many of you who are Christians here have read the 95 Theses that Martin Luther penned at the church in Wittenberg on 31st of October 1517? How many of you have read the 95 Theses? I want you to go and read the 95 Theses. Why am I saying this? Dialogue in an organized manner. How many of you here who are Christians have read the great debate between Athanasius and Irenaeus, which ultimately led to the convention of the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed? How many of you who are Christians here recite the Nicene Creed of 324 AD? How many of you who are Christians know about the Nicene Creed? And you are Christians in the Council of Nicaea. I conclude by saying that we can only dialogue on the basis of knowledge. When you have knowledge, you lose fear, because you know that what you are talking about is evidence-based. And your knowledge must be about many things. I'm a professed Christian, and I gave a friend of mine, there is a book which is written by Desmond P. Tutu. How many of you have read the book God is Not a Christian by Desmond P. Tutu? How many of you? How many of you have read the book God is Not a Christian, Desmond P. Tutu? How many of you have read the book There is Some Element of Godlessness in Christianity and Muslim by Kamau Macharia? How many of you have read Towards Genocide in Kenya, The Curse of Negative Ethnicity by Koigi Wawamwere? None. Therefore, as I conclude, my message is, let us dialogue intergenerationally, but I want to dialogue with individuals who have information. Because when you have information, you have the courage to talk. And you have the courage to speak and to offer an opinion. And when you have an opinion, you can change that opinion when you have superior evidence. The question is, some people say, a friend of mine used to say that so-and-so holds an opinion. He said, no, let us find out whether he holds the opinion or is the opinion that holds him. Because there are individuals who claim they hold the opinion, but they have no opinion. They are held by certain dogmatic positions. So, I've spoken longer than I intended. You are young suckers that will grow when the old banana dies. But there is also another saying. As long as the old goat does not die, the young goats will never thrive. It is the duty of those who are old to also have mentees. You who are old here, how many of you are you mentoring? You must mentor at least 10 people in your circle. And mentorship is reciprocal. And when you do that, then you can change the world. So young Kenyans and those who are not Kenyans, my message to you is that you must always remember that a society is only moved by ideas. And those ideas must be held by men and women who are prepared to change society. There must be men and women who have courage. And today in Kenya, it is one of the most difficult things to be courageous. All of us want to be politically correct. In Kenya, one of the most dangerous things, and I've said this before, is to be honest. But yet I encourage you to be honest. One of the most dangerous things in this country today is to be courageous, and I encourage you to be courageous. One of the most dangerous things in Kenya today is to be a Kenyan. It is easy to run to your tribe. But yet Samora Machel once said, for the new African nation to thrive, the tribe must die. But I do not mean that the tribe dies, that it does not exist. No, it should remain a mark of identity, but not a basis for decision making. That is what we must embrace. And you must say so and do so courageously. So be Kikuyu all you want, be Luo all you want, be Kamba all you want, be Luhya all you want. But when we are making decisions, let's make decisions on the basis of that which is good and right. Today at Kemu University, when you are being taught law, do you ask the tribe of the lecturer? No. What you want is a good lecturer, don't you? It is the great Deng Xiaoping who said, when they were changing the economy of China, he said, in China we have made the decision that we want to catch a rat. And in that exercise, we do not care whether the cat that catches the rat is black or white. We only want a cat that catches the rat. That is the decision that we must make as a people. If we make that decision, then our countries will be right. I'll take 2 questions, then I leave. Thank you.
Let's appreciate the Prof. Prof, kindly with your indulgence, you may resume your seat at that point. Let's appreciate the professor much, much better than that. Oops. That was thank you, Chibet. That was mind-boggling and mind-stimulating and mind-stretching. As he catches his breath, and I will ask the protocol teams to serve him some liquid. Okay, he is fine, all right? So that we are able to continue this dialogue. I know he has indulged us longer than he anticipated. He had given me a heads up that he'll need to be attending to another function shortly after this. And I appreciate your indulgence for a little longer. And he has accepted to receive at least 2 questions. And so as we prepare to receive those questions, I will ask, there was a panel that was to join him there to engage in this dialogue. So I'll invite them to the fore to join him. Allow me to just go straight to the names that have been given. I'll ask Professor. So I'll ask Professor Robert Gateru to join the professor on the podium. That's the VC, Riara University, a former principal of Kenya Methodist University. I'll ask Mr. Anthony Manyara, the president of KUSO, and also ESN, that is Africa Students Network and Kenya University Students Organization. I will ask Mr. Boniface from Equity. Is he here? Boniface? He hasn't come, Kinoti? Not yet, all right. I'll ask Chebet. Where's Chebet? Gen Z. Okay, please hand over the microphone to somebody else. Who is agile to help with the microphone? Great. And then finally, I'll ask the Bishop, Samuel Kadia, who will represent the voice of the church. So this lady and gentlemen, these ladies and gentlemen will engage us further But in the interest of time, because Prof has to leave, I will ask for the 2 questions to be submitted from the floor. Open 2 questions. I'll just keep it open. Yes. Yes, can I have some? Yes. Solomon, help with this. Let's have this moved, please. Some strong students, yes. All right. Great. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So can we have the courageous voices? Okay, let's. All right. Please be precise. Introduce yourself, name, institution that you're representing, and get to the question. No commentaries as at the moment.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Anyway, by the way of introduction, I'm Emmanuel Chogombani, a Liberian by nationality. I'm a student of international relations at KMO. Yeah, my question has to do with, I listened to the professor presentation. Let me extend my warmest felicitation to the professor. Professor, thank you very much for your presentation. My question is, how can the young generation embark on the success of decision making when we have the old leaders of our continent in Africa who craft and adapt every laws and policy that govern us on the continent of Africa? I'm asking this question because in 2015, the Africa Agenda 2063 was crafted and adopted by the old leaders. They are the controller of the Africa Agenda 2063. Now, I also extend my question to the world. The United Nations was founded in 1945. It took 70 years before including young people into its resolution. The resolution, the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250, that recognizes the role young people play in long-term peace and sustainable development. Since that resolution was adopted,
I've gotten your question.
You can,
okay, thank you.
All right.
The second question?
Let's take the second question.
From a lady?
Yes, Prof prefers hear the voice of the ladies as well.
From a lady?
Any courageous lady to ask a question. Let's keep it precise and clear.
If there is none, I'll proceed to answer the question.
All right, sir. You may proceed.
Let me thank you very much, my young friend from Liberia. We do a lot of work in Liberia, we know. And in the year 1963, on the 25th day of May 1963, one of the arguments by Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah was that we unite quickly. And people brought in a number of arguments that we should redo the boundaries. And both Nkrumah and Nyerere said, if we start redoing the boundaries, there'll be so many conflicts that Africa will be at war for many years. That is why, therefore, in 1963, something came up which I want you to go and read about. The doctrine of inviolability or intangibility of inherited boundaries. It was repeated again in 1964 at the second OAU conference in Cairo in Egypt. And after that, only 2 countries have been created since. South Sudan in the year 2011 and Eritrea after the war in 1991. Because the whole idea is that you retain the countries as they are. That tells you how difficult it is. And we have had in the recent past leaders who have remained in power for a very long time. Paul Biya of Cameroon, now at age 91. Nguema of Equatorial Guinea. It is not going to be easy. If you look at Europe, they went through this phase. If you look at Asia, they went through this phase. It is your duty to remain vigilant and to keep on pushing the agenda. I believe some of you have read Africa Agenda 2063, Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and all these declarations that we make. They are good things. You can't quarrel with Africa Agenda 2063. You can't quarrel with the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them. They are good. But the young people must ensure that they are involved and that they involve themselves. Sometimes you don't have to be involved, you get involved. And if you look at the history of those who have been involved, ask different generations. I already talked about those who are involved in the freedom struggle. Look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, who was in his 20s. How old was Fidel Castro? How old was Simon Bolivar, who liberated Latin America? It is the duty of young people. He is a university student here, and we've met before. But the question I keep on asking, the university students ought to be concerned with critical things about the society. That is what we expect about them. We don't expect the university student to be talking about the size of chapati at the central catering unit. They can talk about that, but they talk about bigger national issues. Because how you engage people is also very important. There are things that you can get depending on how you ask for them. Even when you are disagreeing with people, you must disagree with people in an agreeable fashion. And I want to conclude, therefore, by saying, never give up. Try and try again. And if you fail, know that success awaits you on the other boundary. This is the message. Success who are ready to endure. And I want to conclude this because you are bishop. If you look at the history of Christianity, almost all disciples of Christ were martyred. Almost all of them. In other words, you've got to die. Because there are Muslims here. In order for Islam to be what it is, you will agree with me, what we call the Quran did not exist when the Prophet was there. The putting it together in one was not there. How many fitnas were fought? The wars of the fitnas. People fought and died. So don't expect that you are going to get things in your lifetime. No, play your part. That is all you can do. Play your part. You'll now allow me to leave.
Thank you very much, Prof. I'll ask Madam Vice.
Thank you very much. You may resume your seats, please. I want, before I start, and I acknowledge the presence of the Deputy Vice Chancellor, the presence of the Principal, and all of you who are here, before I make my very short intervention, I want to invite Abdul and Favor to come forth and read 2 poems. And read like you read a poem. You know how a poem is read. Modulate your voice.
Okay, thank you. The poem is entitled Fear by... The poem is entitled Fear by Khalil Gibran. It is said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled from the peaks of the mountains, the long winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter, there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there is no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that's where the river will know. It's not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean.
Thank you very much. That poem by Khalil Gibran is one of the most powerful poems ever written. And I want you beyond this to go and read it. The title is Fear, and also learn about Khalil Gibran. The second poem is a famous poem by Rudyard Kipling, If.
We are also training on public speaking here.
Thank you. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing there and blaming in you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting or being lied about, don't deal in lies. Or being hated, don't give up way to hating. And yet don't look too good nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear and hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by nerves and to make a trip for tools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop and build them up with worn out tools. If you can make one beep of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerves and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says them, hold on. If you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if either foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men caught with you but none too much, if you can feel the forgiving minute with 6 seconds worth of distance run, yours is earth and everything that's in it, and which is more, you will be a man, my son. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Those two poems are some of the most powerful poems ever written. If, you may take if, my friend. Excuse me, this is yours to keep. Read it and internalize it. I'm not going to give a lecture. I'm going to engage in a conversation. How many of you here profess to be Muslims? How many of you here? What was the first word that the Prophet Muhammad was asked to read by the angel Jibril?
Thank you. My name is Hanan Kasim, Treasurer Kemusa. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was instructed to read. The Arabic text is Iqra, which means
read. Iqra. Those were the words. And remember that the Prophet was illiterate, but he was made to read, and it was Iqra. For those of you who are Christians, at what age did Christ appear in the temple? And which book did he read? Or which book did he read from? Those who profess to be Christians. Can somebody come and tell me, the students? Yes, please. There's somebody at the back.
I think it was at the age of 12.
Yes.
And he read the book of Isaiah.
He read from the book of Isaiah at age 12. At what age was the prophet Moses called by God to go to Egypt? when he was herding the cattle of his father-in-law Jethro? At what age? When he saw the burning bush? Who knows? This is a Christian university. You profess to be Christians. None of you knows. Find out. At what age did Uzziah become king of Judah? And where is it recorded in the Bible? In which book? At what age did Uzziah become the king? And in which book is it recorded? You who claim to be Christians. No, not you. The students, because we are talking about generations. And we are talking about knowledge. And when we are talking about knowledge, it means that you must acquire that knowledge. And the only way of acquiring that knowledge is by reading. And it is important when we talk about intergenerational conversation that we talk about generations that have information. Today we are talking about the Generation Z. Do you know who has popularized that categorization? Those of you who call yourselves the Generation Z. Do you know which American psychologist has written about the generations? Who knows? Because you say you are Generation Z. And you are people who live in times of knowledge, where you can Google. Do you know? You are Generation Z. How many of you here have heard of an American lady called Jean-Marie Tweng? I want you to go and read Jean-Marie Tweng, because it is Jean-Marie Tweng that has written a book called Generations. And she is the one who says, and he is writing about America. So let us not define ourselves by things that we do not understand. That is the first thing. Particularly those of us who are Africans.